computer. Hi everyone, this is Black Card Red Spade, Adrian speaking. So today we have my beloved co-host and dear friend, Jamie Glancy, whom I will be interviewing this time since he did such a stellar job on the previous occasion. As you guys know by now, we have this policy that if we want to know about other people's stories, then we need to be willing to tell our own, and this is no exception in this case. So I've known Jamie for pretty much a year now. If you guys don't know the history, we met at a brokerage event. We spoke of Nassim Taleb and his work. We just struck so many chords, and we've been working together for quite a few months now. And it's been an absolute pleasure to not only have Jamie as a colleague, but also as a dear friend. And you know, without further ado, I would just like to say, the floor is all yours, my friend. Tell your story.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I suppose pleasure to be on the receiving end this time. I'm wondering, where should I start?
Well, just you know, I think, you know, like we did with myself, you know, we don't have to go into every bit of detail, but you know, all the relevant details that you think people ought to know about you. You know, your likes, your dislikes, you know, what you are currently doing, currently working on, and so on.
Cool. So I suppose I'll give a little bit of a context to where I am now. So currently at university in London, the London Institute of Banking and Finance. Just started in the second year, and obviously a very sort of different university experience so far, especially the last 6 to 8 months has been very different. I'm sure everyone up and down the country knows. But yeah, so studying a degree in finance, investment and risk, and it's a funny, well, I say it's a funny story. It's a different story to how I came to be sitting in that position. But yeah, so well, a few of the things I like, markets obviously is a big one. But then outside of that, me personally, a massive fan of tennis, by far my favourite sport. Watch it sort of religiously. Big fan of powerlifting as well, and strongman and all the different characters that you get in that sort of space. So big fan of that. And obviously, well, gyms are closed now, but the last few months have been getting sort of big time into like bodybuilding and that sort of training. So that's been a good bit of fun as well. So definitely a very big part of my life doing all that sort of stuff. As well, I mean, I love books, love reading, can't get enough of it, especially the last sort of year and a half. I think I posted a picture of like the stack of books that I've read, and it might take me a little bit longer than some people to read a book, but Christ, I just don't stop reading them. It's like every single day. Love to get a bit of reading done. You know, it's just such a good way to sort of build a base of knowledge, and especially, you know, there's so much material out there on anything. So especially like right now, for the last, I guess, 6 months, I've just been big time into reading about options and a little bit of programming as well. So yeah, so I suppose like, well, you'll attest, Adrian, but also a few of the other people that we've had on here will attest to like the different stuff that I've been building in Excel. Love doing the stuff like that, just creating a sort of model and watching it all come together, and especially with the options as well, because it was kind of a bit of a project to me to kind of, well, initially I was thinking, oh, there's no like good resource out there that lets me view like 3D graphs of like option payoffs and option Greeks and all those sorts of stuff. I was like, let me just try and build one in Excel, because that was the thing that I was best at the time. And so yeah, so I did it. It took me a few sleepless nights, like up until the early hours of the morning, just like typing away on Excel. Probably got a sad picture, but just doing that, and then eventually getting a bit better, and then finding a way to like build more complex systems. So like different ways that you can view like a spread builder. So having a collection of options together that you have purchased and seeing what those payoffs look like over time and over when the underlying moves and when volatility moves, all sorts of things like that I just absolutely love, and try and add new features all the time, and working with some pretty smart people as well to improve those. So some of the guys from Macro Hedged who are on Twitter, definitely love working with them to get some of the improvements in there, and just try and make it as good a thing as possible. And it's strange because it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like doing something that you love and is fun. And yeah, once you do that, it's not work anymore. It's just like a long, fun project that you're working on that, you know, spits out some pretty graphs at the end. So all those sorts of different things that I love doing. Yeah. So I suppose gearing up for a very different month, I think I'm going to be doing a lot more running. I've actually looked up this new programs like Couch to 5K. So it's like where you start off doing like a small amount of running, and then eventually build up over the course of a month to be able to run a 5K. And it's been a long time since I last ran a 5K. I think I must have been
Yeah,
about
you
50.
and me both.
So it's like 6 years ago. So I think it's going to be painful, but it should be rewarding at the end of the day.
You know, this is what I've always liked and appreciated about you is that, like myself, you have a very eclectic set of interests and activities that you like to perform. I mean, let's use the example, for instance, how many people do you know who are into tennis, which is a very athletic sport? I mean, in terms of the nimbleness that's required, agility and speed, but yet, you know, the same person also does powerlifting and a bit of bits of bodybuilding. That's a very unusual combination to find. I mean, quite honestly, I don't know anyone apart from yourself who falls into that specific category.
Yeah.
But also, the other interesting thing regarding that is that you're also into these very intellectual topics. I mean, for those who've never used options before, they are complex bloody derivatives. Even vanilla options are not easy to understand. I mean, I know the word vanilla makes it seem so simple because it's only one side, but even a vanilla transaction is pretty damn complex if you add 4, 5, 6 variables into that effective. And I'm just talking about the first level Greeks over here. I'm not even talking about second level Greeks and third level Greeks and implied volatility and all those kind of things. And yet you clearly embody a healthy balance of brains and brawn, if I can put it that way. And that is really great because it shows that you not only have a high level of intellectual intelligence, but also physical intelligence. And do you think that the physical intelligence that you've been developing has assisted your I don't like to use that goddamn word academic because you know how I feel about academia and I know how you feel about them too. But intellectual intelligence, if I can use that word, do you find that the physical has helped with your intellectual development?
I think I know exactly what you mean. I wouldn't say there's like a direct link, but it's definitely in the sort of skills that you build up in doing all the sort of physical activity. So I remember when I was, I think, like 13. So before that point, I'd always played a lot of tennis, a lot of squash, table tennis, badminton, all sort of racket sports. So it's my sort of thing to be holding a racket. And well, basically started playing tennis from going from maybe like an hour a week or always hitting against like the wall at the back of the garden or whatever, just going from that to playing literally like 20 hours a week and literally like overnight. So it was this very sort of different transference when I joined this new club, and definitely the coaches there, what happened is that they worked my arse off. There was no room for, I don't want to say error, but there was no room for laziness. It was either you put in the work or you get left behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happened is that, I mean, I loved it, absolutely loved it. I kind of thrived in that environment where no bullshit, just put the work in and we'll respect you for that. Doesn't matter what the end result is in that sort of sense.
It's very
And
binary, isn't it? You either make it or you don't. You either work or you don't. Did you also
yeah,
find that?
yeah. I mean, it was like there was no in between level here. It was like we don't care if you make it to become like top 10 in the UK, or if you make it to become a professional player one day or something. It was just you're here to play a high level of tennis, to work your butt off in terms of like fitness stuff. And it was like if you put the work in, that's all that we ask from you. And it kind of really helped to build this work ethic of being able to slog through stuff that's really hard. So these people are like hardcore. So like it is today in the UK, it's like 5 degrees or something where I am. We'd be up at sort of like 7:30 in the morning out on the court starting off with our drills. And it was just like helped. There was no prisoners. It was just you do the work, you get in, you get out, and you do like your hours. And I think having that environment where you just put the work in and you're surrounded by like-minded people who enjoyed what they were doing. Like firstly, they were good at tennis, which was great. But secondly, also just loved the grind. They absolutely loved the grind. And I think over the sort of 3-4 years that I was there, it just helped me to build that ability to, even when something's tough, to be able to just slog through. And I think that's definitely helped in terms of the intellectual stuff. Because I remember, like first, it's like anyone who first learns options now. And I think this when I look at like the more like complex and exotic options, I'm thinking, wow, that looks really hard and really difficult. How am I ever going to get my head around it? But I think when I remember reading like my first book about options or watching my first videos online, just thinking like, this is so different, this is so weird, it's so hard, like how am I ever going to get my head around this? But I think what the attributes that I definitely gained from putting in all that sort of physical hard work actually benefited me in terms of like my mentality, is that I'm more than happy to put in the hard work, to sit down and work through a problem until
Mm.
either it gets done or it's just impossible. And it's very rarely that I will say this is impossible, I can't do it. I'll like be sitting there thinking. And I've definitely found this, like doing all the stuff in Excel with the options modeling, is that I will be there thinking days, for weeks, just thinking on this like one particular problem. I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And eventually, like sometimes there's a light bulb moment. Sometimes you've got to really like sort of slog through and not feel particularly confident about what you're doing. But
Yeah.
like, this is the right path to take, and these are the right inputs that I need to type in, and all these different things. But having that ability to say, like, even though this is hard work, I'm still going to do it. And it also helps that it's enjoyable. But I think definitely the sort of physical work, and especially with the powerlifting stuff as well, because that was definitely I think it's more of a mental challenge than it's a physical one, as odd as that sounds, but it definitely
No,
just
no,
helped.
I'm with you on that one. I mean, we do very similar disciplines, albeit from a slightly different perspective. Like the calisthenics, for instance, is
Mm,
also a form of powerlifting if you really think about it. Except you're not using weights; you're using your body weight. But
yeah.
I don't know if you also find that you have to go into almost a Zen-like state, especially if you perform very difficult movements.
Mm, mm. Yeah, completely agree. It was like, especially found this with squatting or deadlifting, less so with
Oh
bench.
yeah.
If you gear up to do a heavy squat, it's like you have to take yourself not necessarily to a different place, but because it doesn't matter how heavy the weight is. Like when you're a beginner, maybe like 20 kilos, just the bar is heavy for you. I promise you, it's the same feeling as you get stronger. It's the same heaviness. And I even one of the best powerlifters of all time, Ed Cohen, gave an interview like years ago, but basically saying, the interviewer asked him, how does it feel to squat like 450 kilos? Like, is it different? What does it feel like? Because it's such a heavy weight. And he asked the interviewer, what's your best squat ever? And he's like 200 kilos. He's like, it's exactly how it felt to squat 200 kilos for you. And I think it's like, it's a hard thing to kind of to accept that no matter how strong you are, yeah, the weight's going to go up, but that same fear, that same sort of feeling of having that really sort of heavy weight on your back
Don't you think
is,
that this falls, sorry to interrupt you there, partner, but don't you think that this falls in line with what Einstein said about relativity? You know, everything is relative at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah, completely. It's that same feeling, that same fear for everyone. And like, a hard thing is a hard thing, no matter what. Doesn't matter
Mm.
how big and strong you are. It's like things are hard. Things are hard. It may be different for other people, but a hard thing is always a hard thing. Is kind of the
Yeah,
way that I
yeah,
put
yeah,
it.
exactly. And that's something that I wanted to ask you, you know, regarding the options, because you said that you don't mind slogging through things. And I'm of the belief that you probably cultivated that work ethic, as you said, from doing your powerlifting and your tennis and stuff, because there is a correlation between physical fitness and intellectual fitness. I mean, if you look at
Mm,
the different types of IQ, so you get two types of IQ for those who don't know. You get fluid IQ, which has to do with your ability to solve problems given new information and new whatever. And you have crystallized IQ, which relies more on the knowledge, or rather your knowledge that you've built up and experience and things, and using that to solve problems. Now, interestingly enough, if you look at your fluid IQ, it definitely drops as you get older. You're not going to have the same fluid IQ at 71, say, as what you will at 21. The only way
mm,
that you can relatively keep that at a high level is by doing physical exercise. Funny enough, that's one of the few things that they found that actually works. So it's actually quite amazing to see how we are putting in the work in our youth right now. I mean, we're 21, I'm 35 now, so I mean, we're still very young,
mm,
but we are putting in a lot more work than many people our age. I've noticed that it's not the norm for people our age to necessarily be working as hard as we do. It certainly
mm,
isn't.
mm,
You would expect it to be the case, but it's not. Um, I mean, relative to the global population. And without wanting to go into too much detail regarding this, I, I cannot help but think that this is also where optionality comes into play. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is regarding the options, what got you into it in the first place, for one? And two, do you feel that you are mathematically gifted or inclined, that it gave you some sort of an edge, or was it just a case of having enough of an interest and a work ethic to want to excel at it the way that you do?
mhm. Okay. Okay, so I'll go for the first one first. How did I get into it? So it's a very it's luck. Like a lot of things actually in my sort of brief history is that back in, I want to say August of 2019, I was on Twitter as you are, and this like prize draw came up. Not a prize draw, but kind of like I'll enter this competition, get a 3 month free thing. So it's with Macro Hedged, which is
Oh, with Adam, yeah.
yeah, with Adam and Hugh, and you'll like enter this competition. You'll get a quarters free subscription to our option desk. And I was like, nothing to lose. But at that point, I had no idea. Well, I knew what options were, but I had no idea what the. Like, I knew of them, but I didn't know them. And I was like, okay, fine. And somehow won this competition along with one other person. And remember my first day on this like new platform. So it's basically a lot of sort of industry professionals are all on there, just talking about different like flows and stuff and different information that they're seeing in their sectors. And I remember like reading some of the stuff and just thinking, I have no idea what any of this is at all. Like, I can't understand it. But I was kind of thinking, this is like such an opportunity to kind of talk with people who are in much more senior positions than I am, people who are potentially in the same line of work as I want to be, and all that. So how can I leverage that? I was like, I've just got to like learn. I've just got to learn. And so luckily they had a options course that they were selling, and it was discounted down from whatever the price was. And I was thinking, right, okay, I'll just buy this. I'll just buy it because I think my student loan was just about to come through. So I was like, okay, I'll be okay for the next sort of 3 months. And bought it, and it was like 35 hours of material that I was thinking, wow,
That's
this is
decent.
great. Yeah, and for the price I paid, I mean, I would say any price was too low, really, because it's such a good set of materials, and both of them are very good at explaining all the different sort of facets of this industry, this sort of niche in finance. And I would just sit up at night watching these videos, rewatch, and eventually just coupled with all that stuff that was on the chat on the options desk, stuff started to make sense. And I was just, because everything up to that point I'd always ask, oh, does anyone got any like book recommendations? Anyone know a good book that I can read? And done that all through sort of like working when I was working in banking. It's just like any person that I would meet, I'd be like, oh, like if I was interested in what they were doing, I'd be like, oh, have you got a good book on whatever? And so of course I asked this time, and just got like a flood of responses. I was thinking, fantastic. So I stuck them all on like an Amazon wish list and just started, buy one, read it, buy the next one, read it, and eventually just got through. And I think it was around the time sort of like February, March, when Corona was kicking off big time especially in the UK.
Oh,
I was
I
like,
remember that well.
yeah, I was like, okay, right. There's probably an options trade here,
That's why
and
we're here now, because of
yeah,
this,
yeah, literally,
Corona.
yeah, exactly. So silver linings and all, and I was just like, I just like put out my first ever sort of like trade idea, and if I had done it, I would have got absolutely crushed because it was the wrong idea. I think it was when the S&P was trading down, when the futures in sort of like late February were trading down at sort of like 3,000 or something. And I was like, oh yeah, this move is overdone. So let's do like a risk reversal. So risk reversal is where you sell a put and you buy a call. And this is after like a big event. So where the implied
Oh,
volatility.
that's going heavily long, isn't it?
Yeah, so essentially you're going like you got positive deltas on, so you're looking for
Mm.
upside in the market, but at the same time you're looking for depression in the IV in the put wing. So you're expecting that vol to
Yeah, of course. So
down.
like a Vega crush on your short leg.
Yeah, exactly, because you're looking at the skew and saying, right, it's way too steep relative to recent levels. So like the Z score, so this the number of standard deviations away that it is from the average. It was like at 2.5 or something. I was thinking, yeah, this move is big time overdone. And so I put the trade recommendation now. I think it was like seller 2,600, put buyer 3,400 call. And if you had held onto that for the next 3 weeks, you would have got absolutely just destroyed. You would have got absolutely
Yep.
just killed on that. And so that was a fun first experience, thinking like, Christ, this is crap. But actually, the main reason that I did start getting into the option stuff was because in January I started running like my own sort of trading account. So I had a bit of money saved up and put, I think, £2,000 into a brokerage account with LMAX. So I was basically just trading currencies and then some CFDs as well on like equity indices and commodities. And it was actually going quite well for the first month. Obviously, in January this year, you had the Soleimani assassination and the potential conflict with Iran and the US, and stayed up all night to like sort of trade those things and to trade the sort of month ahead. I think I recall there was like a bank of, I think it was the BOC, the Bank of Canada rate decision and different stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, fantastic. So there was a bit of opportunity there for me to make money, and I did. And it was a combination of luck, leverage, and a small bit of skill chucked in there for good measure, that I had like doubled this account to 4,000 by the end of January. And February wasn't so busy. There was like Corona stuff, but it was just sort of uncertain about the actual impact of what that would be. And I remember at sort of early sort of March, WTI crude was trading at, I want to say, $51 per barrel.
Is that just
And
before the crash or just after it started crashing
it
like
was
a stone?
just before. It was just before, and I was like convinced about this because China had shut down. Essentially, I was thinking, right, demand is crushed. If they've locked down, like, how bad is this as far as actually going to be? Especially if it spreads through Europe as it was.
Mm.
And I was thinking, right, so if this just means like the world is going to shut down, obviously that has big impact on the demand for crude. So I think, okay, right, I'll sell crude at 51 because it hadn't crashed massively. It'd gone down from, I think, like 60 to 50, especially after the Soleimani stuff, where oil just like spiked, because as it does on those sorts of
Oh yeah, I
Middle
remember
East.
that. Oh.
And yeah, so I was like, fantastic. It hasn't moved far enough, in my opinion. I didn't have a particular price target. I was just thinking, yeah, this is going down. I don't know how much, but big time going down. And yeah, and so for the next 2 weeks, I was stuck in this over leveraged position because I'd basically averaged in from, I think I'd leveraged like 30 times, basically averaging in from short of 51, short of 51, 51.50, short of 52, and then maxed out at 52 and a half, because I had zero concept of like risk management and like what's a proper way to manage account risk. I just sort of got like this like FOMO, where I'd basically find myself watching like the tick chart to like obsess over every little tick, and I was thinking,
Trust me,
this
partner. I know
is
exactly
ridiculous.
what you mean, though, and it's so
It was like,
easy to get caught up in that, isn't it?
yeah, it's like every cent that crude moved, I was like making or losing. I think at one point like £5.
Jesus, how bad were your stress levels at that point? My
No,
goodness.
I couldn't get on a tube. If I ever had to travel somewhere, I couldn't get on a tube because I'd lose Wi-Fi signal, and I'd have to
Oh,
like get a bus because I couldn't stand not knowing what my position was for the next 5 minutes because it was so much on the line, and so I just had everything on. It was completely leveraged to the max, and just crude just kept on ticking up. It would tick up, tick up, tick up, and then whenever like when China announced their deaths, their like daily death count, it would dip down 50 cents.
let's give
And then I just,
let's give the listeners bits of perspective of how crazy it is to trade crude. So one contract, I believe, is 1,000 barrels, correct?
that's right.
So how many barrels were you? How many contracts were you trading?
Well, I think on the CFDs, I was trading at, I think the CFDs were like 100 barrels per contract. And I think I had 5 contracts on. So it was about $5 per
Oh, so it's less
day.
on CFD. Okay, so it's less
Yeah,
leverage than a future because futures contracts, I do remember it's 1,000 barrels per futures contract, and I
yeah,
think
exactly.
the multiplier is what, $1,000 per dollar move or something like that.
It
You
would
just
be,
correct me
I
if I'm wrong.
think it'd be 10, yeah, $10 per cent move in crude. So you're getting quite a lot of leverage there. And so obviously you start making, well, you lose money initially off the spread, and it
Yeah,
took
so it
me
is. So it is
like,
$1,000 per dollar. Oh my God, yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of money. And so I was like, I suppose trading half of that. So I was sort of 500 quid per dollar move, and just crude just
Yeah.
kept picking up. So I was obviously, I mean, literally that was like my life savings up to
So
that
you were
point.
nipping, to say the least.
I was it didn't sleep that much for the next few
Well,
weeks.
my point exactly.
And yeah, so crew just kept ticking up, ticking up, ticking up. And by this, because I just thought I was invincible. I just thought I was absolutely invincible. I got like doubled my account using what I thought was like sound.
Oh Christ, the
All
same happened to me
the,
as well.
all the decisions that I'd made for the last month had basically been perfect. Well, in terms of like risk management, because I think I had like a 60% strike rate on terms of successful trades, and I was quite good actually at cutting out trades. But then all my big winners were ones where I just averaged in down.
Oh, painful. That's a
Quite lucky.
painful lesson.
Yeah, exactly. And so my average in crude, I think was like 51 and a half. And then crude ticked up to like 55. And I remember it was just before I went into uni one day. But no, sorry. Before that, a couple of days before, I remember crude came down to 51.60 or something. So it was 10, so it was like 50 quid loss, but not taking into account the borrow fees. 50 quid loss.
So
And I
yeah,
was
just
thinking,
your realized loss if you took it
I
there.
was thinking, yeah, exactly. No, so I was thinking, yeah, this thing's going to go down. I'm going to make back all my borrow costs and more. Like finally, the world has realised that crude is going to shit. And so I was like, okay. And then the US opened, and I remember this was 1:30, and then or 2:30, and crude just spiked up again to like 53. And I was like, you're taking the piss. From losing like 50 quid to losing what 750 quid in the space of an hour.
Ouch.
I was like shit. And over the next few days, I was like, I can't take this anymore. It's like eating too much into my account. Crude was up at like 55. I was eating a fat loss. I was like, I can't do this. And I just cut the trade. I remember cutting the trade on my way into uni one morning. And that was that. And then, oh my God, the next fucking weekend, over the course of the week, crude ticked down to 45, 42, 41. And then we came into Friday. Over the weekend, Saudi Arabia and Russia announced their price war.
Oh
Over
yeah, I remember that. That was a disaster for crude.
and the price of crude dropped from 41 or 40 dollars 50 cents down to $31 over the weekend.
Do you remember how
And
many traders thought it was going to turn over there around 30 because of the former bottom that was set in back in 2016?
yeah, and I remember just being like, I can't believe I've missed this trade by a week. I've completely, that would have been like life-changing money for me if I
Of
had like,
course it would have
yeah.
been. Hell.
No, hold on, let me just work it out. So it's $500 a point, and I would have made 20 points. So that would have been 10 grand.
10,000, yeah. Yeah, I
I
get
could be
that.
like, I could take my girlfriend on holiday. I could go to like a nice restaurant or
If you don't have
something.
10K, that is a life-changing sum of money. I don't care what anyone says.
Exactly. So I basically set my account back to where it was in the first place, a bit less, and I was like, fuck, what do I do? And this at the same time was thinking like, I don't understand options that well yet, but it seems like there's a lot less path dependency because obviously you've got these linear payoffs. So I was like, if I had bought a put or done a put spread or something like that, or even like a ratio spread or something, I would have had defined loss, defined reward, potentially unlimited reward, but I would know exactly what I was risking at all times. I wouldn't take as much of a loss if the price had gone against me. And I remember just from like that point on, I was like, I am never trading in Delta One again because I just couldn't do it.
Let me ask you
Just
this as well, Pon. Do you also think that trading in Delta ones over the long term, especially if you do day trading, is almost the equivalent of what Talib would say is like picking up pennies in front of a steamroller? Because that's what it feels like to me a lot of the time, is that you think because let's be honest, whenever you trade Delta ones, it's normally in a lower volatility environment, or rather lower volatility on the day or the week or wherever. But all of a sudden you realize that your risk is not as defined as what you think it is, because it's always that excuse, I'll just move my stop loss a bit lower or a little bit lower. How much lower can it go? Or if you're short, how much higher can it go? As high or as low as it wants to. Who the hell are you to decide otherwise? But with options, you don't have that issue.
no,
Sure. Okay. So you're going long of volatility and you're paying your premium and you know exactly what you'll lose. But at least you know what the hell you will lose, as opposed to
yeah,
wondering how much more you can lose. Do you
yeah,
also find that eliminates a portion of the stress for you? Because it does for me.
yeah, completely. I think even though even though of course you still risk an amount of money, and depends how you kind of structure a trade, that you can have potentially unlimited risk. So if you sell more of one type of option than you do buying one, or you have those risk reversals where it's essentially at some point delta one. But if you can do like a structured trade, like a put spread or a zigzag, or a ratio spread or something, where you're buying the higher or lower strikes depending on whether it's a call or put spread. You know exactly what you're getting into, and potentially I can lose all of this money, but I know that's all I can lose by design. And it's a lot more affordable than trading in Delta One,
And you
and
get better gearing. I think you get much better gearing too on options.
Exactly. And I guess my next big fear was like, if you get a gap over the weekend like you did in crude.
Oh my God, that was terrible.
Your stop loss is worthless. It's worth jack shit. You could have been long crude at 40, stop loss 39, risking, I don't know, 10 grand for the dollar. You would have opened up on the Monday morning.
Yeah, even if you put on a market stop loss, you're right. It would have been absolutely nothing. You'd still take a massive loss.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be down like 100 grand.
Easy.
And it's like you heard, and I heard horror stories. And this was another good thing about being on that desk, is that you were hearing like the stories from like the professionals and like people that they knew, traders that they knew, getting carted out because they'd lost so much over that weekend. People had lost their jobs because of this thing. And I was like, this is fucking mental. I was like, I just don't think I can do this kind of like undefined risk, because even though a stop loss 99.999% of the time will get filled at around that level, there's no guarantee that you won't have one of those weekend events again, that sort of gap risk over the weekend.
Well, exactly. And as well as I do, all it takes is one black swan event to wipe you out.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you're not like, and the next example that I thought of was like back in 2015 with the Euro Swiss.
I benefited a lot from that one. I'll tell you a story about that, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was like, when the price, it was like 6 a.m, so there was no liquidity, and the SMB came out and announced, I think they said they're removing the peg.
They're depegging from the euro. Yeah.
And the Swiss just like gained so much value, and Euro Swiss went from like 110 to 90 in a minute less.
I saw that.
And I'm like, what? And I was thinking, like, what stop loss will get filled when the price has gapped that much that quickly?
It won't.
And some I know there was one trader. Well, there is one trader, Tom Dante on Twitter.
Tom Dante. I know of him.
His stop got filled apparently to completely, and I thought that's a fucking miracle. But I was just thinking, like, how the fuck can you trade without?
But even he said it was sheer luck. He said it was not skill that got that stop loss filled.
Exactly. So I was thinking with options, I will take that risk completely out of the picture, and just not have that worry anymore that you were exposed to that risk. Of course, you construct a trade where you still are sort of exposed to that gap risk. But
you can always just use a synthetic option if you really want to. I mean, it will. I don't know quite as much as you do, so just correct me if I'm wrong on this. But if you create a synthetic, say a synthetic call or a synthetic put, isn't it still a lot less risk than what it would be if you traded a future or a CFD position?
What, so using?
I'm just trying to remember how this works. So you say you're short of one, you're long of another one. So you create a synthetic long call option or a synthetic long put option, by selling one.
With put call parity, yeah. So
that's it.
Longer call, shorter put is a future.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Future and a put. Future and a yeah. So I suppose you could use that, and I suppose the risks in that are just like sort of borrow costs, because I mean you've got the same payoff essentially, but I mean it's like you could structure a trade where you're like short the wings, long in the middle, And if you sell like a multiple of the wings, then yeah, of course, you're still exposed to the kind of risk of a big gapping move, but you have complete freedom to say, I don't want to take that risk. And this was one of the things talking with some traders recently about how they should be structuring their books around this election. And there's one guy that I still talk to and do talk to regularly, that he runs quite a large book of options on UK equities, and he was like head scared about this election and how best to kind of get his book in a good position. And basically just like, right, you need like the most cost effective way to like neutralize all of your sort of gamma risk as you go out, because he had fairly short positions out on the calendar at like big sort of levels away from the money. So I was like, look, you need like a fairly costless solution that's gonna, well, even if it's not costless, get something that's gonna protect you from the next few days, no matter what happens. Because of course, everyone was predicting like big uncertainty, and of course, well, I haven't even
Well, look at where we are right now. I mean, we still don't even know who the president is as we speak.
Exactly. And equities have ramped, but no one knew what was going to happen, really.
No.
And so it's like, right, you just need the most cost-effective solution to manage that. And I think having that freedom to say, to be able to like structure different positions the way that you choose, and of course, there's always a cost, but having that safety, that ability to lock in safety over a short period, it's like purchasing insurance.
It's exactly like that.
You can absolutely do that and protect yourself for as long as you want, for as short a time as you want, and just go that way. So that was it's been a good sort of exercise to do that recently. But actually, I should come back to your second question. Am I like mathematically gifted or not at this stuff? I would say no. I all through school I sort of struggled with maths, but only because I didn't enjoy it. I didn't see the point. I didn't see the point in like learning.
Sounds like me.
Quadratic equations and learning the quadratic formula. I'm like, when am I ever going to need to differentiate something in real life or integrate something? And I look back now, I'm like, it's like, you don't know the half of it, mate.
Now we know why, but couldn't you just explain this to us back then? Would it really have killed you to explain it to us?
I think I hated it that much. You know, if I had known like this would be so useful, I would have put in a lot more work, because it was
you and me both.
It was something that I really sort of disliked, didn't see the point, and I was like, why do I need to bother with this? But I think knowing what I do now, I would have like been all over that and tried a lot harder. So I think I'm good with numbers, like thinking in my head, like sort of just basic arithmetic, and also trying to like conceptualize different equations and be able to think about like different calculus stuff, like differentiation, integration. I can sort of do stuff like that, like think about it in my head, like the shape of a curve, what it might look like.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I've had to work very, very, very hard over the last year to kind of get those skills to where they need to be now to get better. So again, it's just been this sort of like slog, and that kind of, as is a general theme in my life, it's just like you need to work very hard to get to the same level to where you're like competent at stuff. So yeah, it's definitely just been a hard work sort of thing. I think I do have some like natural ability to think about numbers like in my head, like sort of arithmetic. Outside of that, it's just the hard work sort of thing.
You know what I found though is that math is, and I know in the UK they say maths, but I say math. You know, bugger anyone who's got a problem with that. But what I find with it though is that it's a language, and I never realized that until I reached adulthood, that it essentially is just another language. So if you could learn to speak, I don't know, French or German or Japanese for that matter, then you can learn how to speak the language of math and physics, because it essentially is just another language. I've found personally, like that I'm very similar to you in the way you describe. When it comes to my arithmetic, I can do reasonably complex calculations without needing a calculator in a relatively short space of time. Where I do find that I have struggled is because I don't always understand what the hell certain symbols mean, for one, or what the rules are regarding how you apply certain steps to equations and things. So I think so that brings me to the point where I said it's like learning a language. If you know how to structure a sentence, then you'll know how to spell correctly, for one, and also how to use the correct grammar. So mathematics is also a form of spelling and grammar. Would you agree? At least that's the way I see it. I don't know if I'm missing something here, but I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
No, I agree. It's just different rules, isn't it? It's once you learn the rules, and you can go forth and conquer, sort of thing. But I also think math has the potential to be very sort of beautiful and elegant, and especially not something that I would have thought. If you told me 5 years ago you're going to think this about maths,
but Jamie, let's be honest. Many teachers suck at presenting math, and that's no shade at them. But I don't think they know how to do it. I honestly think that they see it as, just something that is part of the curriculum. You have to do it. We don't know why or how you'll find it useful, but government said you should do it, and therefore you should do it. Many of them don't even have the foresight to even consider all the amazing applications for it. It's like you're with yourself and myself. We only discovered the truly beautiful applications thereof into adulthood. I mean, if you teach a child about the beauty of a calculus from, say, the age of 5 or 6, I'm not saying, that they need to know how to do freaking differential equations and all that stuff from that age, but if you just introduce them to basic concepts of how it applies in real life, wow, by the time they reach the age of having to learn it, which is what, 16, 17, I don't know, I can't remember now. Hell, can you imagine how beastly they'll become at mathematics if it's all presented to them in a real world kind of manner at that age?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was, again, one of the things that I struggled with. I remember with statistics, like basic sort of statistics, I was like, I don't see the point for this. Like, I get what you can do with it, but this has no bearing on the things that I do. And now I'm like, oh, I love sort of like looking at the stats. Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love to see like a histogram of daily returns for something. I'm like, it sounds a bit sad, but I just absolutely love it now. I just can't get enough of it. Like looking at the sort of data and like having a better appreciation for what you can actually do with data. And even though, so I remember I was watching a few weeks ago this documentary on social media and how companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon and whoever else are using, firstly collecting your data in different types of forms, and then you like target products that you. I was thinking, okay, whilst I disagree with the premise of kind of doing that kind of subversively, I still thought like, oh, that's so cool. Like the way that they're like collecting your data and different sort of facets of it, I thought was very interesting. Like how long you spend looking at a particular picture or something like that, and the different things that you'll click on, and then B, having the ability to like create a model or a system or an algorithm that will take advantage of that. I thought you've got to have like some seriously like clever people behind that, and I'd love to see
absolutely.
Even though I disagree with what they're doing in that space because it seems just too invasive, I still think I would love to see how they do it.
There's a massive ethical dilemma regarding that. I fully agree with you, but as you rightfully said, you've got to commend the brains of being able to do that, and that's not Zuckerberg who came up with that. No way is it Zuckerberg. There are far smarter people, and that's something that I found in real world applications too. That it's not always the smartest people who run the show. The smartest people are often the guys behind the scenes who create all these things, but it's the most charismatic people who do tend to run the show. Case in point, Zuckerberg, in spite of in spite of being what he's like, though, he's not always a likable guy, but he's very charismatic when he's in front of camera. You got to give him that. Donald Trump, incredibly charismatic, whether you like him or not. Same for all these other leaders of tech companies, for the most part. Steve Jobs, oh my God, remember how charismatic he was? But he was far from being a technical genius, not even close.
No, was the brains behind the show, and then Steve could go out there and sell ice to an Eskimo sort of thing.
That's the thing. That's exactly the thing. And you know, this also leads me to another question that I have for you, because you've been podcasting with me for quite a while now. I think we've been doing this for nearly 6 months. Come to the end of it. How do you find? Well, if you do find it, of course, I mean, I'm not going to assume here, but do you find that podcasting has changed you in any kind of way, you know, for the better or for the worse since you've been doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has. I remember all throughout sort of school and working and whatever before doing this, that I would hate sitting down. Like I didn't. So, well, I suppose in school, public speaking, hated it. Really disliked it. Just couldn't do it. Got too nervous and everything. And then when I started working, I remember like the first time I had to like pick up a phone and call someone and do all that. Really didn't like it, but then got the gist for it and actually did start to enjoy it. But then I still struggled in terms of like if I had to do like a presentation or something like that. I really was sort of struggled with how to present myself in the best sort of way and that sort of stuff. But then knowing what I do now, and especially from doing these podcasts and talking to different people and having to sort of like entertain and interact and kind of probe them for the best part of an hour or more, definitely has built my sort of confidence and skill in that area. Because I mean, now I've done sort of like videos for like my uni work, doing like teaching stuff with different companies and like making these sort of videos, and like it's definitely helped with my skill and confidence of interacting with different people. And it's definitely like a year ago, it's not like a completely night and day difference. I'd still say I was decent at it back then from like working and being in a professional environment and dealing with clients who you had to have a certain level of competence in terms of like social skill. But definitely, I mean, it's like that extra sort of 20, 25, 30% tagged on that has really sort of made a difference in terms of now if I want to do a presentation, I know so much better how to do it, how to handle myself. And I think it's definitely worked well, and especially doing it over like Zoom or Teams, where like a year ago it would have been a different story, but helping with that now is definitely a lot different. So when I'm doing those like, whether it's like giving a lecture or giving a presentation or something like that, I know now how to do that a lot better, thanks 99% because of doing these podcasts.
I think that for me personally is that if I look at how nervous, for lack of a better word, I felt the first time I did the podcast versus how I feel right now, it's night and day. Literally, it's like night and day for me. And one of the things that I had to get used to was listening back to my own voice. It's really, I know it sounds really bizarre, but hearing your own voice being played back to you is weird. It's such a weird thing. It's like, whoa, do I sound like that?
Yeah, I know. You can't say different in your head, and then when you hear stuff being played back, you're like, what? I don't sound like that, do I?
Yeah, and then the second question that would come up to me for me regarding that is that how other people? Is that what I sound like to other people? so that also threw me a bit. Yeah, exactly. But the other thing regarding podcasting that also freaked me out in the beginning was I I had all these stupid limiting beliefs regarding podcasting as in, oh, who the hell am I? Who's going to want to listen to what I have to say? Who's even going to want to speak with me, let alone listen to what I have to say? And this is just eliminate. I will actually say it eliminated these limiting beliefs, because if I look at the people whom we've had on the show, you know, the ones that I've interviewed independently or collectively with you, bloody hell, we've actually done freaking well, my friend. Seriously, have done well in such a short space of time, considering that we've had guests from 4 continents across the globe.
Yeah.
And these are not Mickey Mouse people we are talking about. These are all people who are successful in their own respective fields. I mean, you take a guy like Chris Sidiel, who was managing a book of $1.5 billion by the time he was 25. And he had a 2-hour podcast with us. You know, it's not often you get people like that even willing to speak with you, let alone have a chat with you for 2.5, well, nearly 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And you look at the caliber of people now that he's podcasting with, and I think it's more relevant if you're like on Twitter and you're looking at all these people, but different sort of podcasts that he's been on now, it's like, you're like, wow, we've done one with him as well. And so, like, you know, Real Vision with
Raoul Pell.
Yeah, that bloke. He's been on Real Vision now, and I'm like, that gets like a lot of views. And we've done a podcast with him, so I think amongst good,
we're in good company. We're in very good company to have been able to achieve that in such a short space of time, and I think that also did something for me, and that I hope it did the same for you as well. Where it just shows, damn, you know, we actually have some amazing people in our network whom we get to speak with. You know, I mean, you can pretty much pick up a phone and call Chris. You know, I could speak with Chris too. You know, it's not something we could easily have done without having done the podcast. I mean, I feel that podcasting breaks down a lot of barriers. You know, between you and other people. I don't know if you found the same thing, but I definitely have.
When you say barriers?
When I say barriers, I mean in the sense of it breaks down a lot of those formal barriers that you might have with someone. You know, you actually they become more like friends to you after a conversation than just mere acquaintances.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I've messaged Chris afterwards and just like have a sort of like normal chat and stuff, and obviously it's like market focused and that sort of area, but of course it is, but it's so strange to have that, not strange, but it's so it's almost like a privilege to have that sort of ability, and it's all because we've done this sort of thing together. So I think definitely does break down those barriers that you're talking about. But I also think it's strange, because I know you were saying like, oh, why would we have a guy like Chris on the show? Like when you were saying like when we first done, it's like, who wants to like listen to me and what I have to say? Obviously, there's a different story now, but I also think this is definitely a big theme. It's like nothing gained, nothing ventured sort of thing. It's like you have to put yourself in a position to be lucky and to be able to gain from what could happen. And I think that's kind of like that optionality sort of thing of convexity, which I won't try and explain, but it's like so I'll take too long to do it. It's like you put yourself in a position where you can benefit from stuff. It's like don't sell yourself short, just be like, make the most of any opportunity. I definitely think that's been a thing that I have done for the last few years. It's like so I remember basically when I was in year 13, which is the final year of school, it was like I had no university plans. I was thinking, I don't actually know what I want to do, but I was thinking I need to get a job for the summer. I'm not just going to like sit and do nothing all for like the next 6 months before I decide. And so I applied to like a bunch of different places for internships, and I was thinking, where's money? Oh, banking, I'm in finance. I'll just apply to loads of places there. And even though I had no idea what a bank actually did at the time, all I knew is that I could log into my Lloyd's account and there'd be 100 quid sitting there or something, paying me like 1p every 2 years. I was like, I'll just do it and go for it and see what happens. And I think actually that sort of attitude helps so much. And so eventually I did get this internship for the summer on top of different people who were like at university and studying degrees in economics and those sort of like numerical degrees. All because I remember I made a point of it, like I'm going to be the loudest person. I'm going to talk the most. I'm going to ask the most questions, even if I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to like make the most of this because, you know, you only get sort of one shot at these sort of things. And I'm going to try and be like the most charismatic person I can and just make the most of this opportunity.
Clever.
And I kind of like bullshitting my way through just by being like a nice person, trying to be approachable and personable and strike a conversation with everyone. And so I got the internship after a while and did it through the summer. Got offered a job at the end of it, and I was like, fantastic. I'm going to have like a nice sort of stable bit of income, which is fantastic as well. And sort of stayed on for the next 2 years, and met a ton of interesting people along the way. And yeah, it was again this trying to keep that same concept of nothing gained, nothing ventured. Put yourself in a position to benefit from stuff. I was like, right, if there's people that I find interesting, so that's people who are working in the financial services industry, so people who are working in portfolio management, in trading, working in investment banking, who I was in charge of like managing them, of like looking after their accounts and stuff and doing all the sort of dirty work that they needed done. I was like, right, I'm just gonna like read up about the like financial news, and every morning or every couple of mornings send them an email and say, oh look, this has happened, can you tell me more? And it's like, what's the worst that can happen from that? They say they don't reply, or they say, oh, I don't have the time for this right now. And it's like, that's fine, I don't lose anything from that. It's just trying to put yourself in a position where you can build a relationship with someone, and the upside is very much unlimited compared to whatever small amount of downside that you take on the back of that. And
Convexity.
yeah, literally,
That
I'm
is
just trying to,
convexity.
yeah, exactly. It's like having the upside and the downside is very limited, and just trying to take that same concept through. And so when we met back in, well, yeah, a year ago, back last November or
Yeah, it was
December.
almost a year ago now that we've been friends. Gosh,
Yeah,
how time has
exactly.
flown.
It has, hasn't it? It was just having that same mindset of, because I just remember thinking I'm going to go to every single networking event that I can, because what's the worst that happens? I don't meet anyone, I don't get any contacts from it, or I have a bad time. Fine, I'll take that. I might meet something that like changes my life, and there you go. Like, this has obviously very much changed the course of my life compared to like this time last year. So
Well,
I just
crikey,
think,
I mean, we haven't even discussed, and we don't need to discuss it on this podcast in particular, but I mean, you and I now work together for another career accelerator program, among other
yeah,
things. I mean, we're both consultants for them now. And it's
yeah,
only due to the fact that, we work together, and I also said, you know what, meet my friend, you see what pops out. And
mm,
it's optionality. I think I said to you when you interviewed me last time, that my network is the single biggest source of optionality in my life by far, literally
mm,
by far. And I
mm.
stand by that statement.
Yeah, yeah, and it's such a powerful thing that can be leveraged because other people are busy doing their things and furthering their lives and their professional lives and whatever. And it's like, as long as you know them, you kind of take advantage of that. Not in a negative way, but you
No, no,
kind of
no. As
advantage
far
all
as
the
I'm
good.
concerned, you're correct. 100% correct.
Yeah, you take advantage of all the good things that they're doing, and likewise, whatever you're doing, they benefit from that too. So it's just such a sort of nice thing that can build so quickly by having that network.
But also the other thing, you know what, and I've said this to you before, but I'll even say it here officially on the podcast. One of the reasons why I feel we get along so well is because there's no competition between us to outdo one another, which you often do find in many settings in this kind of world that we operate in. It's such a, I think that people look at movies like, the 1987 movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas, and
Yeah.
they all want to be Gordon Gekko, and or what's that other famous movie, the Big Short. The Big Short's the one I'm thinking
Oh
of.
yeah.
They all want to be the guys from the Big Short and so on and so forth, but this
Yeah.
is a bloody cutthroat industry. You don't have many friends in this
Mm.
game. So if you do come across someone who is your friend and genuinely your friend, you better make sure that you hold on to them, because they might
Yeah.
not come around again next time. And and
Yeah.
and, and I think it's what you said earlier too about being charismatic and things, is that this is a game that you have to play. It's not just about who makes the most money. It's about who can survive the longest, and you can
Mm.
climb the ladder by surviving too, because you might be able to make money. A strategy might work for a month, a year, 2 years, or whatever, and then it doesn't work anymore. But if
Mm.
you've created nothing but enemies during that time, you'll quickly be eliminated when they smell weakness, when your strategies stop working. And that
Mm.
is why I still do stand firm by the whole notion: be cool to other people.
Yeah.
There's no need to be a Mr. Hotshot dickhead, for lack of a better word to use, just because you're doing well. You may not always be doing well. And
Yeah.
when you need some help, you want to know that people will be willing to extend a helping hand, as opposed to a knife that they'll stab you with once they get the chance.
Yeah. Yeah. No substitute for just being a sort of a decent person.
No, never, never. I just think it makes networking so much easier. And the, I don't know if you found this thing as well, but I noticed that especially in banking and finance, a lot of people are afraid to show their human side, because for some goddamn reason that I can't figure out why, they think it makes you weak if you show you're a human. Oh, please. It doesn't do that. All it does, well, in fact, it shows inner strength if you're willing to show a bit of humanity and decency.
Mm.
Well, what are
And
your
even,
thoughts?
yeah, even something as simple as saying like I don't know. It's like someone was like,
Oh, God, let's not get into that. Wow.
okay, what's going to happen with the election? And I was like what will stuff do in different scenarios? And I was like, okay, well, it might be this, but to tell you the like truth, I have no idea. I have no idea. It could go up, down, sideways, loop de loop, anything. I don't know. I have no idea. And I
Did
think
we
having that,
just, yeah, exactly. Did we discuss ligometry during one of our podcasts? You know, the whole thing about learning in darkness and knowing what you don't know? I can't remember if we have or not.
I don't know if we have.
But yeah, what you just described is a perfect example of ligometry,
Mm.
because there is so much knowledge inflation and pretension in the workplace, especially in this kind of field. Oh my God, I'm sure you've seen it too, that everyone wants to be seen as the experts, whether it comes
Yeah.
to options or futures or stocks. It's like, and yet you read a book like Taleb's for the viewers, Nassim Taleb's Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable, and he'll show you black on white that this is a profession where there are not that many experts. In fact,
Mm.
we don't really get to call ourselves experts in the field of stockbroking or trading and all that. We are best guessers,
Yeah.
for lack of a better phrase. And I think that's something that's very hard for them to swallow. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because ultimately, what people are trying to do is predict the future,
Yeah. And we
and it's like
suck at that.
impossible task, right? And you see that all the time. I mean, in the book Thinking Fast and Slow by
Oh yeah, with Daniel Kahneman. Bloody
yeah,
hell.
goes into there's multiple chapters on it, but it's basically like kind of like degrees of biases that humans put onto their sort of decision making and outputs from their thinking. Is that oftentimes we think we're more right than we actually are. So he like measured the performance of, I think he took like a bunch of different sort of like therapists or school psychologists or something like that, and basically said like, based on all the information that you know about these children, and you can sit down and talk with them and whatever, where do you think they'll be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And he measured that performance, their performance, up against like this very simple sort of numbers based algorithm that just took into account like grades, the sort of context of their lives, all this sorts of different statistics. And the algorithm kind of like completely crushed the humans in that aspect. And I thought, I mean, these are people who are like meant to be experts in their field, but are getting stuff tremendously wrong, like over half the time wrong, versus a machine that doesn't know the person, that doesn't is just taking into account different data points and spitting an output out. But it's like this fallacy that you need a human touch, and I get it, I do get it, and I think there can be problems from machines where there's not enough sort of like it's too simple, but then you could also at the same time make things too complex. And I guess what it's saying is that we as humans, as people in this industry, is that a lot of people are just trying to predict the future and say, I think this stock will go up, this stock will go down, this stock won't do anything because of X, Y, Z. But it's like there's no guarantee. You're just saying it. It's like best guess, like you say, best. You're just sort of assigning probabilities as you go based on data that you get, and yeah, it's like there's no magic. There's no magic formula.
But also there's no correlation between intelligence and success in this industry. That's a big thing that I also try to get across to other people.
I mean, the only outlier, well, one of the only outliers I'd say would be Renaissance Technologies and James Simons, where his his group are just literally like a bunch of scientists and mathematicians.
Oh yeah.
But that's I mean, that's an extreme, although probably has some merit. But it's like with I like the example of long-term capital management.
Oh God, yeah, look at those guys.
It
Jeez.
was like a sort of baby Rentec sort of thing where, yeah, they had geniuses, they had people with PhDs, with Nobel Prizes, everything, but they still blew up.
My
It's
favorite
like, no,
example, for instance, is the one of Joe Siegel in Anti-Fragile. You have read Anti-Fragile, or have you not got
yeah,
around to it yet? Remember the one about Joe Siegel and the green lumber problem? That's one
yeah,
of my
yeah,
ultimate favorites, or even Fat Tony.
yeah.
The character that Talib likes to use, where
Mm,
he's not a friggin' intellectual, but he killed it on the trading floor. Or Siegel, who didn't even know that green lumber was freshly cut lumber. He thought it was lumber that was spray painted green, for God's
yeah,
sake. And he still made tens of millions of dollars over his career. And the other guy who thought he knew everything about it lost a bloody $1 million and even wrote a book, How I Lost $1 Million.
yeah,
I mean, if that doesn't show you that there is no correlation between intelligence and making money, because let's also be honest that if there were such a high correlation between intelligence and making money, every smart person in the world would be rich, wouldn't
yeah,
it? And every
yeah.
stupid person in the world would be poor. That's not the case by a long shot.
No, no, it's yeah, definitely not a strong correlation. And I think that sort of realization was also why I didn't, well, stop liking just sort of outright contracts. I was thinking there's just so much risk involved, and obviously if this range of people who some don't know what they're doing, others know everything about what they're doing, can't get it right. I mean, I'm just like taking on like a big amount of potentially unlimited risk, unlimited
Mm.
profit as well. But to be like, just take this position when I don't know what's going to happen. So let me try and introduce some sort of certainty. And I think it's nice that you have the sort of mathematical framework behind it that you can introduce with the modeling. But I think it's having that certainty just helps so much more in terms of because the world is a very uncertain place. And different people are able to do different things, and there's not particularly a correlation between the success of people. I think that green lumber problem is really indicative that like anyone can make money. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Anyone can lose money as well. So let me try and limit the amount of money that I can lose by using options and using something that has defined risk.
You see, the thing is, what you also boiled down, or what you also alluded to, is that the world is a very complex place. And there's also a guy called Dave Snowden. Are you familiar with his work by any chance?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'll send you some stuff after we're done with the podcast. But David Snowden is a management consultant, and also he works with what's something that's known as complexity theory and complex systems. And I watched some videos of his, and I read some of the things that he works with. And my God, let me tell you that it is literally no shock to me as to why forecasters get absolutely busted up over the course of their careers, because it's virtually impossible for us to forecast the future. He takes the turkey problem that you see in Black Swan and in Anti-Fragile, and he adds a square to it, like literally in terms of how he builds onto that in an exponential kind of manner. It's so crazy to think that we live in such a complex world, and yet the models that we've created seem to give us this incredibly false sense of security of being able to predict the future. Yet if you read Black Swan, as Taleb says, 1,000 days of looking into the past cannot even tell you what's going to happen one day into the future, let alone 1 year into the future. and yet it's this lesson that doesn't seem to be learned. It's just we're just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. We predict that the economy will be here in 6 months from now or 6 years from now. Yeah, good luck with that. I think in certain ways you can forecast if it's a more static kind of environment. Like demand for certain products is very static. As we know, or certain behaviors are very static, but the dynamic world that we live in, forget it. You're not going to predict the future in a very dynamic world like this.
And if you can, then, well, A, fair play to you, but B, it's like, it's like you're taking such a dynamic system and saying, I'm going to make a concrete decision based on the information that I know now, even when tomorrow it could all change completely. And I suppose that makes decision making quite a difficult tool. And actually, I think one of the things that when I was doing my A levels when I was 17 and 18, one of the topics I studied was philosophy, and so we were able to like look and learn about all these different types of philosophers, and one of the biggest ones was David Hume, which is where Taleb is pulling a lot of the ideas behind the turkey problem. Well, it's David Hume and Karl Popper are the two. That it's like you can't really, just because something's happened X amount of times doesn't necessarily confirm that it will happen in the future. And the kind of leading argument from that is that you can't really confirm anything. You can go ahead and falsify stuff by giving like a counter example of where it doesn't hold up, but it's like you could have a million examples of the white swan. So your thesis could be all swans are white, and obviously that's quite a basic one, but you could get a million examples of a white swan, but it still doesn't confirm the argument. All it takes is one example of a swan that is not white to falsify it.
Yeah, like that picture I sent you when I went for a walk in St. James's Park. Short the S&P. You remember that?
It's like there's no amount of confirming evidence will ever like truly support an argument until. So that's why the scientific method focuses on saying, right, how can I make this wrong? How can I deny this prediction? And I think that's the more sound way of doing it. And I hadn't read Taleb when I was that age, but it's exactly what he's talking about, and exactly what introduces that level of uncertainty that makes just markets so difficult.
Absolutely. You know, Jamie, I just realized how long we've been chatting away here because, you know, as always, when the two of us get started, it's like we just don't stop. um, do you have any final thoughts, you know, to conclude this conversation? You know, any final thoughts about, you know, advice that you would give someone who wants to get into markets, or, you know, just final thoughts about what's happening in the world for that matter? You know, the floor is yours. You pick whatever you want to
Oh,
go with right now. It's your podcast too, you know.
yeah. The one bit of advice that I would say that if I think I've learned anything, it's that be lucky, but if you can't be lucky, at least put yourself in a position to benefit from a bit of luck. It just means reach out to that person on LinkedIn, reach out to that person on Twitter, if you find like a business card of someone, just do it, because what have you got to lose? That would be my one thing. And then thoughts on the world at the moment. Jesus, that's a tough one. I would say, despite all the craziness, I would say, like, keep the faith. Things will be better at some point. I mean, whilst that goes against every single thing I've just said in this entire podcast about like confirmation and not being able to confirm something just because you've got a million cases of it, but the world has always got better. The world has always got better. So don't let the current craziness completely destroy you, no matter whether that's COVID and lockdowns or the election or any sort of conflicts. Just keep the faith, keep going, and always stay lucky.
I think that's a brilliant sentiment to have, and you know, it just builds onto the whole notion of optionality. That there's always an option you can pursue. So thanks for that. I think you're definitely on the right track. And yeah, you know, just to conclude things, I just want to say thanks a lot for the time that you took to also tell your story. I mean, hell, what a privilege to sit here and speak with you. You know, regardless of the fact that I haven't seen you in a while. It's always just nice to catch up with you and just to get your thoughts on things. And I know for certain that there's a lot of incredibly useful stuff that any viewer, or rather listener in this instance, will be able to extract from this conversation.
Absolutely.
To their own optionality. And you know what, I just want to say once again, thanks for, you know, just being part of this journey with me. It's fantastic to have you as a co-host of this podcast. You know, it's a lot of its success has also been due to all the inputs that you've given over all these episodes. And you know, it's just, on a more personal note, it's just a privilege to know you and to have you as a friend, you know, more so than anything else. It's just, that to me is the biggest privilege, to call you my friend. And you know, I'm just grateful for you, and thanks a lot for being a part of this journey and for being one of the black hearts and the red spades.
Absolutely. And likewise, of course, I echo the sentiments. Obviously it has literally been a life-changing experience. I think like all the things that I wouldn't be doing now if I hadn't met you that one cold November night. So yeah, no, definitely. I think, and it goes back to that sort of staying lucky message. Just keep on staying lucky and do what you have to do that. So yeah, it has been a fantastic journey so far. And I look forward to it continuing.
Perfect. Well, me too. So let's conclude there, and I look forward to the next interview that we have going on. So I think that's going to be reasonably soon anyway. So let's see how that goes. Onwards and upwards, as I always like to say.
As ever. Excellent. All right, mate.
Thanks a lot, my friend. Have yourself a great afternoon.
And you. Catch you later.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah.